Amel, could you share with us some examples of attacks that, for you, are good example of the risk of lack of cybersecurity?
Yes, sure. I will take an example of the last year, the Mirai attack. It was the attack starting from CCTV camera, and the result was a denial of service on the internet and the major commercial site on internet. For me, this attack is really important because it illustrates the fact that the objects are not just attacked for themselves, but are also an attack vector or an attack path to the whole system. And this is really changing the game, because you don't need to just analyze the security regarding the object function, such as the sensor, which measure sensor is able to give, is a signature important or not. But you also have to take into account the risk on the system through the object. And this means that every object has to be secured, at least for its potential bad influence on the system. And this is really changing the game and adding some new requirements for objects in the Internet of Things.
Okay, so the attacks contribute also to identify new solutions and to improve the system.
Definitely, yes.
Interesting. I'd like to ask, the question also to Alexander.
Yes. Well, thank you for mentioning the mirror attack. So I was also thinking before to mention the mirror attack, but decided to mention another one, which was the blue one, which raised up just some weeks ago. This one was one of the attacks which raised my professional interest in the last time, because you have a possibility to attack billions of devices which are already on the market, and most of them cannot be updated anymore because the support is not there anymore, or there's just a functionality for the update is missing on the devices. Another good example are lots of the devices with a ZigBee interface which was attacked in the previous times in the last years, and there exactly the problem shows as with the Mirai, that the device itself is not the main attack source, but it opens up a new path for the attacker to the other devices. So this, I think, from my point of view, are the very interesting attack vectors. And I think the weaknesses is not only the technical one, but also a personal one. It's the missing awareness on the device manufacturer side, software developer side, manager, user side. And from the technical point of view, the trend to fix selective problems instead of creating a holistic security concept, and missing over-the-air update possibilities.
Right. Okay. So that's indeed evolving as well in two sides. Stefan Noller will be also very interesting, since you are also using a different approach in cybersecurity with blockchain. So what is your point of view on those very representative attack?
Yes, sure. Well, first I want to start with an example, but also with a pattern I could see if we look at different attacks that we saw in the past, which is either stolen secrets of the device, or even worse, if the same secret is being used for a vast amount, or sometimes even millions of devices. So the general security idea is to have a specific secret for every single device, which ideally is not known by anyone else. So ideally the secret is generated even on the device. And we saw a lot of breaches and attacks, millions of smart meters that had to be called back because they shared a single secret that was stolen. So one pattern that we see is that the management of keys and secrets for devices and their backend is a weakness. What we think is that with a combination of cryptography, so basically having really a dedicated secret generated on every single device, and blockchain can help to solve this. So you could think of an architecture where you publish the public key of a device to the blockchain, so the identity of the device is known and is immutable, and everyone can check it. And everyone can verify messages that are coming from the device with that known public key, but the private key stays on the device and cannot be hacked and is not duplicated or used at any other place in the world. We think that would be an appropriate kind of way to handle that situation and to avoid many of those breaches that we saw in the past.
Okay, indeed. So based on the different examples you gave all, I think there is a lot of different threats, and there is a real need for global management of this risk, actually from the identification of the risk to its prevention. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue, for to having, the security bit as an essential part of the initial setup of your IoT strategy or device manufacturing, so this has to be one of the first thoughts when, implementing a device strategy or an IoT strategy, and not something that is being added on later, or solved as a minor part somewhere in the later stage. This is something that has to be first priority on the first day of rollout of an IoT strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I would like to do now is to ask the participants of this webinar if they share this point of view on the importance of cybersecurity. So you can see here the questions. So do you consider cybersecurity as main functions to invest in? Yes or not? So I can share with you that 100% of the participants consider cybersecurity as the main function to invest when considering IoT. So I think we all agree on this, and this is the main point and the first point of this webinar. Actually, the question is not if it's important now, but it's really how to set up this cybersecurity solution. And to share also some feedback we received from Blue level. So at Blue we are innovation accelerator working on deep tech, smart systems, and digital. And we are accelerating the transition from the technology to the market. And we are working on cybersecurity as well. And we asked the questions to the industrial companies, part of a large network, 50,000 contacts, if they consider cybersecurity as a very important function. And they all said yes. But when we asked them, have you already implemented cybersecurity? Most of them said no. And when we asked the question why, it was quite interesting to notice that at the component level, they were saying cybersecurity has to be implemented at the application level. And we were speaking with the users at the application level. They were considering that the supplier have to offer cybersecurity solution with their devices. So the question is really who has to take care of cybersecurity? Who has to implement it? And I would like to ask the question to our experts today, and I would like to ask them to share their point of view if they consider that now the IoT developer really see the need of cybersecurity as a prerequisite, and if they have already taken that into account, or if it's still necessary to educate and convince the companies and the developer to invest in cybersecurity. And if you could share some examples with us, that would be very interesting. So have you seen an evolution? Do you see it's still needed to educate the companies? And who has to implement cybersecurity? So I'd like to ask you the questions to Alain. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say that probably we have an evolution today. more and more products include cybersecurity, at least minimum function. However, there is still some lack in the development, and the market or the new product are still more driven by innovation than by cybersecurity. I think therefore a lot of companies in this area, the most important thing is to put quickly some product on the market, to test it, to check if the customers are buying it or not, and after adding cybersecurity. And this is clearly the bad solution. I would have just one recent example about pacemakers. A company developing pacemakers had some remarks from the FDA, Food and Drug Administration in USA, last year about security weaknesses in their product. They correct the problem, and last week another announcement was done that another vulnerability was found because adding some other specific function. So this illustrates the fact that security was not taken into account at the development stage, let's say the security by design, but just trying to add it later. And clearly it is not a solution, and clearly this way of developing the product will leave some holes, some security holes in all the product and application.
Okay, so it has to be rather a case-by-case approach, but still needs to educate a bit the industry.
Yes, definitely yes.
Okay, interesting. I'd like to ask the question to Antonio Escobar from Infineon, representing a component manufacturer. Who is your point of view? Who has to implement the cybersecurity?
Well, I think this is a complex problem, mainly because of the lack of proper and effective communication with the consumers. It's really difficult to tell which products on the market are secure and which aren't, and often we find out only when it's too late and we have already paid for them. As a result, there has been really little motivation for developers to focus on security and to do things the right way. The budget is usually spent on marketable features instead. This has been improving recently with greater consumer awareness about their privacy, but nonetheless, I think it is important to implement EU regulation to create at least minimum security standards and to really educate the consumers.
Okay. Okay, we'll come back on this point on standardization later on, because as you're right, it's a very important point. Yeah, you highlighted this with this good image. Could you explain a bit more? What is your idea about securities alignments markets? And okay, I'm gonna ask the question now to Alexander.
Yeah.
Alexander, what is your point of view as with an equipment manufacturer at Bosch Connected Devices?
Yeah. So my feeling is that only a small number of IoT developers consider the need of the security features. The others maybe have it in mind, but act on the promise. If the customer doesn't request, we will not convince them to about the importance of the security topics. And what I've mentioned or noticed visiting different business conferences regarding the cybersecurity, as main topic is that the number of participants is still quite low. And yeah, if you meet 3 or 4 of the conferences, you see only the same people and in the same companies, mainly big companies, in such meetings. So regarding the examples, So I cannot bring any bad examples from, and I don't want to bring any bad examples from other companies. It's not really my way to do it. So what I wanted to do is just to illustrate how we focus on the security topic at Bosch generally, and also at Bosch Connected Devices and Solutions. So at Bosch we have a mandatory process during the product development process. It's a security engineering process, and we have to follow the process for every new product development. So main parts of the process are risk assessment, security concept, and for sure pen test at the end. So for every device which has a RF connectivity, BLE, Wi-Fi, ZigBee, LoRa, no matter what, we have to run a pen test for the device. So it's mandatory for during the product development process. And we live this process even for the devices which seems not to be security relevant from the first point of view. So I have some examples on the bottom of the slides. Maybe some of the participants know our product, which is the cross-domain development kit, short XDK. It's a small sensor for fast prototyping. And on the first hand, it was planned as a pure rapid prototyping device for developers. And a developer kit usually do not have any security relevance. In the next step, we extended the support also for the productive environments, because we noticed that our customer had used the XDKs in such environments. With this step, the security question starts to get interesting, not only for us, but also for our customers. And without binding the customer to any fixed firmware and keep the flexibility of a programmable sensor node, we decided to create a holistic security concept as an application node and run a pen test to assess whether the measures we recommend to our customer to implement will provide a good protection level. So both steps are already done with good results also from the pen test. And we plan to provide application note for free, at least to our B2B customers, as a practical guide to create security applications with XDK in the Bosch own IoT cloud.
Okay, so it's definitely a strong topic at Bosch Connected Device level, and you are already providing a lot of solutions in this field.
Yeah, not only Bosch Connected Devices and Solutions, but also for Bosch generally.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's definitely a strong topic then. Thank you for that. Now I'd like to ask the question to Stefan Noder, representing Uberge. So maybe you have a different point of view since addressing a different solution for cybersecurity.
Yeah, well, yes and no. So first of all, I would like to say that it improved a little bit, but still having a security strategy alongside with an IoT device or device strategy is not, where it should be. I think the Bosch example was quite impressive and nice, but I think there are many more players out there that are just rushing out products that have close to no security, and this has to change. I personally also believe that this is not just a matter of education of developers or putting their priorities right, but also something where the regulator or trade associations or manufacturers have to unite and work on higher standards and make them mandatory, either by code of conduct or stuff like that, or by putting them into law. That's one thing that I believe. That from the framework, if you like, something has to happen to put that in a higher priority. But I would also like to point out another thing. One of the reasons why I have a lot of hope that this might change significantly in the near future, and the reason for that is that I think there will be completely new ways of implementing IoT products in the near future that introduce a lot more automation, smart contracts, things that where not just a camera sits somewhere and does something, but where a temperature sensor sits in a building and controls a million euro insurance contract, for example, you know, and says if the temperature falls below a certain threshold or humidity is too high or whatever, the insurance will pay €1 million the next day, you know, without even asking. It's just because they trust the sensors. And these kinds of applications will have a lot of power. I think and they will be disruptive in many industries. But in the same time, everyone would agree that this only works if these sensors cannot be hacked or are totally secure and trustworthy. And that's why I think, you know, that the security aspects will move from a hygiene factor, if you like, you know, where someone says, oh, well, has someone considered security? Oh, yes, let's have a minute for that, to a crucial part of the offering as such, you know. So these automated, also blockchain-based sensors that run smart contracts will have to be super secure. Otherwise, the whole business model would not fly. This is something we expect in the near future to come more and more. And this is why I think, you know, if we talk about this issue 3 years later, we will see a completely different picture, because suddenly it's in the main priority list of IoT manufacturers, just like this.
All right. Okay, quite interesting. You know, what I would like to do now is maybe to ask our participants, based on the discussion we had now, if they are planning themselves to implement cybersecurity first. And secondly, so please answer to this question. Because secondly, the question will be to share also how they are considering implementing cybersecurity. Should it be done at component level, at system level, or application level? So first, the question on implementing cybersecurity. And I can share with you that 90% of the participants are planning to implement cybersecurity. So this is something quite interesting. Now let's define how. And the question is, according to you, should it be done at component level, system level, but also at cloud level? So if you can analyze your point of view on that. So a few more. Okay, 2 additional seconds, so we can close this question. And then I can share with you the result. And actually 60% of the participants consider that it should be implemented at the system level. So interesting feedback from this webinar as well. So I suggest we go on this discussion on, okay, cybersecurity is key, different strategy could be implemented. But if you consider today, we can say that one of the approach today is to use the 2-factor authentication systems using SMS. And I think when you are paying online, these systems is mainly used. But according to the NIST, the National Institute of Standard Technologies, there is a lot of insecurities in this with this approach. So again, what is currently used doesn't seem to be so secured, and new solution will be implemented. So what are, according to you, what will be the future? I mean, we have already defined what has to be done, but what will be the future? What will be the new solution to be implemented? And I'd like to ask the question again to Alain, if you can answer quickly on these questions. According to you, what are the new solutions?
Yeah, I would say that first of all, clearly there is no unique, generic, perfect solution for all the problems. Each problem, each application has to perform a risk analysis to define what is the risk and then what is the best solution. However, from my point of view, I think that the best solution today, with the best resistance, are solution mixing hardware secure element, smart card, but not only HSM, TPM, or whatever you want, with a user identification done at the secure element level. Yeah, this is clearly for me today, only hardware and dedicated secure hardware can afford a solution resistant to physical attack and to attack where attackers has a physical access to the object.
Okay. Thank you, Anna, for that. I'd like to ask the same question to Stefan. Again, to highlight also the positioning of blockchain. We all know that blockchain is raising interest for a lot of people, so it's very interesting also to see how blockchain could impact the cybersecurity activity.
Yeah, sure. I mean, on one hand, I would, of course, agree to what Alain just said. You know that there is certainly not the one solution that solves all these problems. But anyway, I personally, as said earlier, you know, I think there's a good chance that a combination of technologies from the cryptographic field, you know, so in our case, we use asymmetric cryptography, the public-private key kind of thing, which I explained earlier, and the blockchain, you know, because the blockchain offers an immutable track record, you know, so even 5 years later, an insurance company, for example, can say there was a storm this afternoon in this area, or a building owner can say, you know, humidity was never above a certain level, and so on, or a machine owner can say maintenance happened just as agreed in the contract, and all these kind of things. If you put them into a blockchain, they become a different quality. So you can even go to court, you know, because you can argue this is an immutable record. It's like a notary service, if you like, you know, like someone checked it every day and put a seal on it, which is not something on a technical, not so much a technical level, but it's more a logic, you know, a certain system that is being applied. Just like if you think back, you know, when online banking was introduced, first everyone recognized that it would be a good idea to use HTTPS, which is, by the way, asymmetric cryptography in its core. And then the banking systems figured out that a additional system, you know, with a PIN or whatever kind of thing makes sense. And suddenly the segment began to fly. And today, no one would go into a bank, you know, to do a transaction anymore. And that's what I think will happen to or has to happen to IoT as well. You know, that we implement something like HTTPS to the web, but perhaps a little bit more appropriate, you know, for the things world, that makes things accountable and trustworthy from a very generic point of view. And I think blockchain can play a crucial role in that by, you know, providing this immutable record, identity record. You can always check, you know, is that thing known, and is the address, hasn't it been changed, and what are the GPS locations, and so on.
All right.
For me, that will be a game changer, you know, because suddenly it's not a unsecure whatever kind of data that is coming from somewhere, but from that point on, companies can really rely on the data that is coming from sensors. Or even if you know, in your initial picture, you showed that actuators are important as well. So imagine a energy company, you know, running a wind turbine. Sometimes they have to send out important messages to these devices that they turn out of the wind, for example, otherwise they break down. It will be very important in the future, you know, to have a track record of that.
All right.
Really, you know, that we can prove it was sent out and it was not executed, for example. This creates a different picture, you know, in terms of liability.
Okay. No,
really. So I think blockchain will add a very important layer to that.
Right. Okay. That's I think an important view as well, and we'll see how the future will evolve. What I like to see now is to say, okay, we have done an overview and we analyze the different threats, the different solutions to be implemented. but we have like a global picture. And I like to come back to a question and to a comment that one of the participants made, saying that the users, the consumers, should be more aware of cybersecurity. And the question I have is, do you consider that specific solution to be implemented for the different market, for different applications? So do you consider that it will be different if we're speaking about hospital, about nuclear plant, about the retail business, about the autonomous vehicle? All of this activity could be impacted by cybersecurity. Do we consider only one solution? How we handle the specific requests and the challenges for all these different applications? How do you see it? Alain, what is your point of view?
I think that each application area has its own specification requirements. So probably we have to have a regulation specific to each area, and there is some starting work for that at the European level, at the national level, in France, Germany, etc., on medical device, industrial system, automotive, and so on. So first, regulation is important. Second, I think that regulation has to be also provided by industry. So industry interested in one sector has to put them together and try to propose some requirements and regulation for this area.
Okay, that's interesting. We'll come back to the standardization later on, and I know that we have already spoke a lot of time, so we need to be to the point a bit more now. And I'd like to ask a question also to Antonio at Infineon. How do you see the different markets, applicative markets, and how do you handle those different markets as component manufacturer?
Well, I think that increasingly what is going to be and is being fought through wires. So this critical institution like hospital or nuclear centrals, I think they should be particularly protected because the consequences of their breach could be really very, very heavy. Can you imagine what would happen, for example, without access to medical files before surgery or with the inability to control nuclear plants? We saw only a few months ago how quickly malware can spread around the world, and that was a meshy attack. So the return on investment, coming back to your first question, for entities is going to come in the form of safety. Think of all the money and time, for example, the WannaCry attack cost. I think latest reports are talking about more than $50 billion. So I think that at the end, cybersecurity is going to be the insurance policy of the next decade.
Okay, very interesting sentence here. Very important punchline for cybersecurity, indeed. Yeah, very interesting feedback from your side also, Antonio. Stefan, short comment on that. How blockchain is considering the different applicative markets.
Is it Stefan here, or shall I answer?
Yeah, Stefan, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you, yeah. Well, I think, to be honest, I think it's a little bit dangerous to put the question in that way, you know, because obviously someone would say, you know, a hospital is more in the need of secure solutions than a parking sensor, for example. But I think it's dangerous because if you think of a city, you know, with thousands of parking sensors and a lot of autonomous driving cars, someone, a 16-year-old boy, you know, hacking all these parking sensors and switching them and just randomly, you know, changing the data they produce, you can create a massive chaos in a city where you know, hospitals will have no access to anything anymore because no one can drive in the city and so on. So I think high security should be the new normal for all kinds of connected devices.
Okay.
I wouldn't say, you know, that a hospital has a drastically higher need for a high security strategy than a parking sensor.
Okay, so it's basically it has to become a standard for any application. And
Right.
about standard, I'd like to ask you two questions. First, what are the standards upcoming? Do you see a specific standard upcoming? And what will be, according to you, the impact of standard in the business? So first, I'd like to ask the question to Alain very quickly. Could you inform us about any new certification ongoing or new standard ongoing or under discussion?
Yeah, I would say that we are starting today with more or less specific regulation per country. France has its own regulation, Germany has its own regulation, USA has its own regulation. The things are moving today with initiative at the European level. We are starting discussing about the European cybersecurity certification scheme. European Commission has published last week, I think, something called Cybersecurity Act. And probably in the future, we will have something at the European level. And this will be a good thing because it will a kind of harmonization of all the best practice at the European level.
Okay, good. I just come back also to Stefan from Urbush. You mentioned several times the importance of the industrial company also to develop standard and but also from the government point of view. You think this is something that has to be taken into account also by the public authorities. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I think, I mean, of course, at the European level is the right place. But in general, I think we need frameworks and guidelines, from the regulator, indeed, to do that. But I also think, that it's wise to have, companies, group come together with their associations and the bodies they usually have and work on self-regulation, code of conduct, standards, because that can be adopted faster and developed further. Yeah. And ideally, that goes hand in hand with work from the regulator's side. But I definitely think things have to speed up on that side.
So I'm coming back to that because actually part of the inSSIght project, the standardization and regulation is part of the action of inSSIght, and inSSIght is involving a lot of different players and smart systems. So I suggest that we will later on come back on this point at inSSIght level, and all the participants to this webinar, we will welcome also to be engaged and to engage with inSSIght to contribute to the cybersecurity standard as industrial players, because it could be indeed quite interesting. I'd like also to ask the question of the business impact of standardization to Antonio from Infineon, and just after to Alexander from Bosch. Antonio, what will be for you the impact of standardization? Would it reinforce your leadership? Will it make possible to capture new markets? What is your point of view?
Well, I think, in my opinion, those labels and those standardization measures could do all that. I think it's a model we have already seen in quality control labels across the EU, such as the bio or bio labels found on food packaging. And really, products or companies that carry this certificate immediately have trust for their customer and the credibility to attract new ones. So I think cybersecurity labels could only expand the market and reach for new businesses. It will also improve the quality of the final products. By having to strive for these labels and certificates, companies will, inevitably have to raise the quality of what they put out. So I think that thanks to a stronger regulation, we will see at the end better products in the field.
Okay. And this is what you mentioned here. So the label will have also a strong impact, and it will be good to have a cybersecurity label to be implemented. Alexander, your point of view regarding Bosch activities? What will be the impact of label?
Yeah, from the Bosch connected devices and solutions view, we have a very differentiated view on this labeling topics, and also very critical view, because it's, from our point of view, it's nearly impossible to find a one size fits all labeling or some kind of a silver bullet. We have seen it in the past, not in the IT area, but for example on the TVs, the HD ready label or full HD ready label, and so on and so on. It was very, very chaotic. And that was also binded to some kind of components built in the device, and assembling BLE beagles, for example, with trusted platform modules just to get a security label will not increase the cost dramatically without providing any security benefits. This is how we see it. A good design security concept and implementation are often more beneficial. So we support the idea of performing a security assessment during a CE, FCC, or other certification processes. Not only that it's not only the availability of specific components is proved, but also the identification and proof of suitable baselines is performed.
Okay. Okay, so it's interesting to have also a different point of view on this topic. So a lot of discussion to be undertaken also at European level. And actually, of course, regarding the business point of view, I guess that for you, Urbush, the cybersecurity is main of the driver for the development of the company and the growth of the company.
Yes, of course. I mean, it's the main thing we are trying to focus with our solution. And I really think, speaking a little bit more general for startups in that field, I expect this to get a lot more disruptive power, if you like, and especially if security issues are being solved, and we more and more work towards a trustworthy layer of IoT devices all around us, then I expect new business models to arise. And just if you look in the insurance sector, it's totally clear, that this industry will be totally shaken up. If this happens, they know it. And this always creates a huge, opportunity for startups, to rush in and offer new kinds of services. So I think that would help a lot, to create new businesses and new startups and create a little bit a level playing ground, if you like, for new players in that area as well.
That's clear. That's what you just mentioned can bring me to the final point from my point of view on cybersecurity. We can implement a lot of solutions, but sometimes the threat is coming also from the users themselves. And that's why maybe the password won't be used anymore, and we don't have the good habits to secure the data and to implement cybersecurity. So we see also new technologies coming that might be also address cybersecurity, like facial recognition, and we have done a demonstration of facial recognition at Blue Morpho with the Gate 1 project. So this is an example. Do you see all that cybersecurity will also be a driver for implementation of new markets, new business model, but from the technology side, bringing new solutions to other markets? Do you agree on that? I will ask the questions to Alexander from Bosch.
Yeah, I totally agree on that it will bring new solutions on the market, intelligent solutions. It's very interesting how it will go on in this area. And
since inSSIght is European project, I think it's also very interesting to look at what is European position on that. And very interestingly, the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, mentioned and explained in September that cybersecurity is the fourth priority of the year ahead. So he said, I want us to better protect Europeans in the digital area. Cyber attacks can be more dangerous to the stability of democracy and economy than guns and tanks. And cyber attacks know no border and no one is immune. So I think at the European Commission level, cyber security is really a strong topic, and there is a real commitment from the European Commission to do action on this side. And that's why they have also communicated on a real action from the European Commission in proposing new tools, including the European Security Agency, to help defend the European citizens against attacks. And recently, a joint initiative, Commission Industry, has been launched with real financing from the European Commission, but also from industrial members of the ECSO. So I think during this webinar, we really highlighted that there is a lot of things to be done on cybersecurity. It's both a threat, but also a real business opportunity. And as we just highlighted, it's really part of the smart system integration ecosystems. For us, cybersecurity is really key. So if you are really interested in this topic and you want to be a player of implementation of cybersecurity in any businesses, any markets, and be part also on maybe standardization and regulation, we invite you also to join inSSIght ecosystems, but also the EPOS platform, to know more about what actions can be implemented from the industry side, but also from the European Commission side. So we'll be really pleased if you can share your point of view on this webinar. When the webinar will close, you have 3 remaining questions. It will be really nice to answer because that will help us also to drive further webinar on very interesting topic, we hope. So I'd like to thank you all for your participation. I'd like first to thank the speakers today. So thank you, Alain.
Thank you, and thank you again to have me invited.
Thank you, Antonio.
Thank you very much. It was a very nice talk.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexander.
Thank you very much. It was very, very interesting.
And again, thank you very much, Stefan, as well, for your participation.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Just for the participants, if you wish to receive more information on cybersecurity, if you want to receive this presentation or have access to the recording of this presentation, you just have to contact us. We will also share with you the contacts of the speakers of today. You just have to contact us. And if you wish also to have more information about inSSIght, you can also contact Petra Weller from BDI Innovation. She's the coordinator of the inSSIght project. So thank you all for your participation. Don't forget to answer the final questions, and we're looking forward to welcome you in additional inSSIght webinar. The next one will be on European Commission calls. So if you are interested to be part of European Commission project, I welcome you to join our next webinar. Thank you very much all, and wishing you a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.